It is Wednesday, November 22nd. Welcome, everybody. John Aravosis here with the Aravosis Report, coming to you live from Chicago. Talk about the latest news from Ukraine and from Israel and Gaza, and a little bit of an America update as well. Just actually two stories, one America story, one Dutch story. Anyway, welcome, guys. Let me get TikTok rolling. Do your hellos, as always. 1 second here. Beep, beep, beep. And like I said, still let people know where you're from. I think it's nice and useful. So hang on, let me get this rolling here. TikTok. So I'm catching up on The Crown again. I was back behind a couple seasons, and I have to say it's a little negative. Like, I don't know why I'd stopped. I'm enjoying it, but it's just they're so awful. It's just like, oof, Find a well-lit area. I am in a well-lit area. Thank you for asking. All right, there we go. Go live. There we go. Anyway, hello all. All right, so we get this rolling here. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. All righty. Woo! Anyway, how are we all today? Hey, TikTokers. Welcome all. Yahoo Dores or something. Anyway, oh boy, I did a lot of Thanksgiving cooking today, so I'm done. Mom's finishing up in the kitchen. I did mine. Hey, Napoleon. Hey, Big Hawk. Hey, guys. But yeah, I've just finished up some Thanksgiving cooking. You were just texting. I wasn't late. I was like a minute late, maybe. What do you mean I'm late? I think I was either on time or a minute late today at most. We are not going to have a nuclear war because there's no one to nuke us. Ain't nobody to nuke us. France, America, and the U.S. all have nukes. Thank you, John S. In the sea, in submarines. Hello, dog. And there is no way for the Russians to nuke us without us nuking them back and destroying them. So it ain't gonna happen. Ain't gonna happen. You know who else has nukes? Israel. They're not nuking us. I'll tell you that. Boop. Hold on. Getting the dog covered up next to me here. Hey, Street Rat in Colorado. Yeah, let's not make jokes about the Palestinians. I mean, especially with that expression, I would have preferred you guys not do that. Thank you, Shane. I'd rather see neither side using that expression because it's rude. Situation in Niagara. Yeah, I'll start talking about it a little bit. I got that at the top of my agenda. I thought I was precisely exactly. I arrived. Thank you, Pam. Actually, as they say, thank you, Cassandra. I arrived exactly at the time I wanted to arrive. So, right. TikTok mic. Is it working or no? It should be right here. TikTok mic. Boop, 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 boop. Yes. Working fine on TikTok. Okay, I figured as much. Just want to make sure. Anyway, hello guys. What's going on? Like I said, I was cooking today. So I made a very simple but very good cranberry recipe I got several years ago. Very simple, but it's good. Fresh cranberries, which I like. First year, actually, it's been really, really good. Oh yeah, ceasefire is top of the issue for the Israeli subject today. Don't worry. Of course, we're talking about that. That's the talk in Israel right now and Gaza. Thank you, Doggy Dave and Tom. But yes, I made my made actually a really good corn muffins that Shay Spence had the recipe up. And Shay's great. He's like one of my online friends who I don't know, but we're like online friends. Or at least we're online friendly, I should say. But he has this wonderful cornbread recipe that's really simple. Thank you, Ava. And I made it and Mom was skeptical. And she's like, and then of course she ate the whole thing, which was the first side. It's just like, this is very good. What's in it? Thank you, Tom and Alex. Whenever you try to make new stuff for Mom, it's very dangerous. Very dangerous. So, anyway. All right, guys. Yeah, we'll stop talking food. Let me get rolling here. Hey, Boppo. So welcome, guys. I am John Aravosis. This is the Aravosis Report. It's my nightly show in which, hold on a second. I'm going to send Callum a message here on my phone. 1 second. Always like to communicate with the mods privately. 1 second. Oops, hang on, guys. Moderation issue here. I always like to kind of. There we go. All right. You got it, Callum. And again, test it out first. Don't jump to conclusions, but keep an eye. All right, guys, let me get rolling. So, welcome. I am John Aravosis. This is my show. Thank you. Who is that? Little Fighter. Hey, Little Fighter. This is my show where actually we started this a year and a half, almost 2 years ago now. Thank you, Joe. Where we talk about the latest news from Ukraine. Thank you, Napoleon. Since the Israel stuff started with Gaza, I've been covering that too because, it's important. And I think in a way, from my perspective, they're kind of related in the international war kind of way. So I've been covering both of them. I think they're both really important topics. And at the beginning, I like to sometimes now cover a couple other breaking stories. We'll talk about the Canadian border explosion. Also mention the elections in Holland that are really kind of effed up as well. Not Holland, in Holland, actually, a little screwed up. Thank you. Who's that? Blip and Jonathan for the gifts there. Anyway, the way the show works is I go through the news that I basically have found to fill you guys in on. And then the second half of the show, take your guys' questions. If you've got a super chat question on YouTube, I will always jump to that immediately as the next thing I talk about is a thank you for supporting my work. And please do also continue to support my work with gifts on TikTok as well. Thank you, Adventures, because I do this for free all week. I've been doing it for free for 2 years. Thank you, Big Hawk. And what enables me to do this is your guys' gifts, among other things, because that is my income. So please keep them coming. Thank you so much. Let's get rolling. Hey, DBZ in the UK. Let's talk first. So there's been a weird explosion at the U.S.-Canadian border. Initially, everybody thought terrorism. They're not saying that yet. They're explicitly saying we don't think it's terrorism yet. It was very weird. There was basically U.S. and Canada at Niagara Falls. There are 4 border crossings, apparently. One, a car, and we don't know even from which direction at this point. There is video. Yep, Stephen, there's video. We don't know from which direction, or maybe they finally figured it out, but they were sort of debating this. A car came zooming really fast. Why don't you jump down? You'll be fine. There you go. All right. My dog was trying to negotiate. She's getting a little older and she was trying to negotiate jumping down from the chair. So I had to help her a little, it's okay. You can do it. This car, thank you, Jeff and Sexseed, comes zooming and hits a ramp or something, or hits the median and goes flying in the air and lands, I think, on the border crossing gate or whatever, but the booth somehow catches on fire. There's an explosion. Thank you, Elizabeth. They don't know. Okay, Tom is saying the video clearly explodes in the air. That was one thing that I was reading. I saw a video that was not clear. There must be a different video. The video I saw had the car coming really fast, a pole in the way, and then it's in the air. But I didn't see an explosion, but I think there's a different video. But I did read that some people felt the video showed an explosion in the air. Thank you, Sasha. Hello, I'm saying thank you to my dog. Hi, Sasha. We don't know. As I said, the powers that be are saying, as Vicky says, no explosives were found in the car, at least according to the first response. Thank you, Western and Pam, for the gifts. So we don't know. It's very weird. 2 people reportedly died. Yep. Very weird too, because it was super accelerated going at the top. But again, what if somebody was having a health crisis? What if somebody tried to kill themselves and got to the border and for some reason hit the wheel? What if they were driving a Tesla? I'm only half joking about that one. So we don't know. But I just wanted to bring it up because initially everybody went terrorism. Now, second issue to bring up really quick, really screwed up. Geert Wilders, who's the far-right, I'm talking far-right racist lunatic in Holland, his Party for Freedom is set to win the Dutch parliamentary elections today, securing 35 of the 150 parliamentary seats. Exit polls are showing. That's pretty freaky. He's a nut job. I'm not so up on my European political parties, but I know this guy. Racist, anti-immigrant, just horrific guy. Very scary. Just very scary. Thank you, Jetta. I don't quite know. I don't know. I just don't quite know what's going on with this kind of stuff. Anyway, it's very weird. Thank you, Marcy. All right, let's jump into Israel and Gaza. So the big story with Israel and Gaza today is this temporary ceasefire, pause, whatever you want to call it. It has not gone into effect yet. It reportedly was agreed to, okay, as of, was it last night? I think last night around 8:20, last night, my time maybe, they agreed to it, which is good. Then it got paused. So the Israeli security cabinet or something is saying that it was going to start initially, thank you, Arifa, it was going to start originally tomorrow morning, Thursday morning, this ceasefire. Now it's at least put back until Friday morning. We don't, and the quote from the Israelis was at least. So it might start Friday morning. It may be further delayed. Thank you, Sean. What the deal is pretty much what we already suspected. Thank you, Mavili. That Israel and Hamas have agreed to a 4-day humanitarian pause. It allows the release of at least 50 of the hostages Hamas is holding. Thank you, Carol. You'll recall that Hamas took like 240 hostages from Israel. Many of them foreigners. I mean, not all Israelis. Many of them children, many of them women, many of them old people, kind of a mix of everybody. There would be 50 of the hostages released. In exchange, the Israelis would release around 150 Palestinians that they're holding in prison. I'll talk about them in a second. Let me see here. Oh yeah, one holdup with the deal was, as of a few hours ago, the Hamas was not able to name who the 50 were that were going to be released, who the 50 hostages were. And obviously, the Israelis and also other countries like the U.S., we have 3 hostages at least that we thought were going to be released as part of this deal, including a 3-year-old girl, a 3-year-old American girl that they're holding hostage. Hamas has been unable to put together a list of their names. So that's got people a little worried, in part because Hamas is not the only group holding hostages. Palestinian Islamic Jihad, another terrorist group in Gaza, is also holding hostages as well. So that could be part of the hangup, I think. I've noticed a couple different folks saying it's buffering on TikTok. Is that just 1 or 2 of you, or are you all getting that? Hopefully my connection's okay, but I don't know. I mean, just checking really quick on TikTok if that's an issue for everybody or not. Deb says no. Well, if Deb says no, Okay. Okay, a lot of you are saying it's fine. Good. Okay, then whoever's buffering, I would say, why don't you leave the live and come back? Because sometimes that fixes it. So it's probably not my stream. It's probably your connection with TikTok or whatever. So try that. Try leaving and come back if you're having a buffering issue. A little more here. The deal would also include the Red Cross being able to visit the hostages, all the remaining hostages that Hamas is holding. The Red Cross will be able to provide them medical aid, which is great. Israel and the U.S. would both stop flights over, in other words, drones and things, spy flights or whatever, over southern Gaza. Over northern Gaza, during the ceasefire, over northern Gaza, the spy flights, the drone flights would stop for 6 hours a day from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. in the afternoon. Let me see what else here. Oh, yeah. And a CNN reports that they were told that the agreement would also allow 200 trucks per day to enter the coastal Gaza, carrying aid and other supplies, including fuel. Currently, there's maybe at best 100 trucks a day making it across. Thank you, Dawn. Before the conflict, there were anywhere from 300 to 400 trucks a day bringing humanitarian aid, etc. So getting up to 200 would be very good. It's certainly double. It's double what they're at right now, which is good. Let me see what else we got here. Okay, a little bit more on the prisoners. So we've talked before about the Israeli, not the Israeli. Keep in mind, like I said, many of these prisoners are not even Israelis. The hostages, many of them are foreigners. There's Americans. There's a lot of Thai. 20% of them are from Thailand, which is wild. According to CNN, the vast majority. Oh yeah, so the hostages they're releasing are mostly going to be women and children. That Hamas will be releasing. Same thing on the Israeli side with the prisoners. They will be women and children. The vast majority of prisoners Israel is going to release as eligible for release are male teenagers. Oh, I see. The vast majority of prisoners listed as eligible are male teenagers aged 16 to 18, although a handful are as young as 14. Some 33 are women. I also wanted to see the charges because people were saying they were political prisoners, whatever, and I wanted to see why was Israel holding these guys. It's what I suspected. A lot of them were throwing things at troops and things, but hang on a sec. The Israeli government on Wednesday published a list of Palestinian prisoners for possible release with their ages and charges on which they are being held. Throwing stones and harming regional security are among the most common. Others are listed as detained for supporting illegal terror organizations, illegal weapons charges, incitement, and at least 2 accusations of attempted murder. Some of the people are listed as being members of Hamas and other Islamic militant groups, but many are not listed as belonging to any organization. So there you go. I have to admit, like I read the stone throwing thing and I thought, here's the thing with the stone throwing thing. At first I read stone throwing and I thought that's stupid. Then I thought, well, if you were literally throwing stones at police, you'd be arrested. Having said that, you wouldn't be arrested for eternity if you were throwing stones at police. I don't think you would. I don't think you would, like in America. So that would bother me. Yeah, if it's well, hey, kids throwing stones at police in America, like, but literally like trying to hurt the police, should, as far as I'm concerned, they should get some jail time. They shouldn't be with adults, but they should actually go to kiddie jail for sure for a little while. But it doesn't mean you put them in jail for a long time, right? I mean, that's the thing. I think, right, you'd arrest and release them. I would want to scare them if they did that. I'd want to get them and just scare them and then let them go. I wouldn't. So that's a bit, yeah, that's a bit much. Thank you, Crazy American. I will say that, because you've seen videos of these kids, and they're kids. I mean, they're being stupid, but, you know, they're picking up stones. You should make them pay a price, but it shouldn't be something that big of a deal. Well, there's an interesting question. Soldier died from a rock throwing. Okay. Once again, I'm not being nuanced enough on this issue. That's a fair point, but that's interesting too. If people are, if soldiers are actually getting killed from the rock throwing, then do you treat the rock throwing as just kids throwing things when soldiers are actually getting, I mean, this is the problem with this issue. Like I said, it's anyway. All right. So I'm going to retract that and say, I'm not sure. Let's keep going here. A little bit more on the Israeli hostages. I should say the hostages taken from Israel. 39 children aged, at least, 39 children aged 18 and under. These are the hostages that Hamas is holding. 39 children aged 18 and under, 44 adult women, 89 adult men aged 19 to 64, 29 adults aged 65 and over. The youngest hostage is Kafir Bibas, who's 10 months old. They're holding a 10-month-old, guys. This is the stuff that bothers me, okay? We can have a debate about whether kids should be thrown in prison or jail for throwing rocks at soldiers, even though some soldiers do get hurt from that. I can be somewhat sympathetic, okay? They're holding a 10-month-old baby hostage, okay? Come on, right? I mean, this is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. You don't hold a 10-month-old hostage. Literally, with a 10-month-old, you turn him over to somebody. You just don't hold a 10-month-old hostage. That makes you an animal. I'm sorry. It makes you an animal. And you don't compare this to anything of Israel holding 13-year-olds who threw things at soldiers. Totally different story. Whether or not that's overreacting, that is a hell of a different story than holding a 10-month-old baby. That's ridiculous. That pisses me off. They're also holding the two oldest people are three. Yafa Adar, Shlomo Mansour, and Arya Zalmanovich, who are all 85 years old. 85 years old? That's a bit much too. You know, I'm sorry. Well, we know there's a humanity to what Hamas was doing, because come on, look what they did in Israel, right? I mean, I'm sorry. Let's not forget that. Now, the second story of the day for Israel that is sure to piss a lot of you off, but oh well, facts are inconvenient things. Carol, the Israelis have gotten through more of the tunnel outside the Al-Shifa hospital, and they're finding stuff, guys. The latest was a Haaretz reporter, Israeli journalist, was there with video that I watched and read his report saying that they found a 170-meter fortified tunnel. 170 meters is going to be 170 yards, so 510, I guess, feet or so, complete with air-conditioned rooms, beds, communications and electricity, a cache of arms, grenades, drones, a bag and sandals looted from a kibbutz, etc. The video I saw included plumbing. They had like a sink with running water. They had a sink with running water in these tunnels underground, okay? I saw a toilet, but I mean, it wasn't a Turkish toilet. It wasn't a hole in the ground. It looked like a bidet. Okay, it looked like a freaking bidet they had in their little, and the bathroom was tiled. This is underground, guys. It's a bathroom that is tiled with white tile. It was pretty, okay? And another of the room had air conditioning. It had those, I say European because we've got them in America, but you see them more in Europe. Those air conditioner things like this that are on the ceiling almost, on the top against the wall. They had air conditioning in their tunnel. And also bad for Hamas, the tunnel is exactly the tunnels that Hamas has used previously. One of the OSINT experts I like, what is it? I'm forgetting what OSINT stands for. Help me out, guys. Oh my God. Open source internet. Open source intelligence, I believe. Internet, I'm saying. Open source intelligence. Guys, Oliver Alexander, who's very good from Denmark. He was looking at it and said the same thing. It is exactly the kind of tunnels that Hamas uses from other videos that Hamas has released, which BBC has released as well. Now, you can get into a debate on whether what that means Israel should do if Hamas has tunnels underneath the hospital, and if these tunnels are or are not being used as command. I don't know. Like, we still need to sort of find that out. But I think, as I've said before, it is very, 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 very complicated. It is very complicated as to what you do. And I still believe this, even after looking at all the issue now. I think too many people, and Jake Tapper had said this yesterday on CNN. Actually, he did a wonderful, really, I'm going to see if I have Jake's thing here. I do have Jake's thing here. Let me even read part of it, because I really like Jake. He's very good. He's very fair. And he was talking a little bit about, let me pull this up. Yeah, it was an interview he did. Hang on a second here. Let me read you some more. Jake is really good. He's a CNN reporter, CNN anchor. Very good guy. Was in Israel a couple of weeks ago, and he's been very, very fair. I mean, covering the Israelis, what this is for them, covering the Palestinians, and how bad this has been for them. I mean, he's been very fair looking at both. But I want to read you a little what he said, because this almost puts in words better than what I've been saying about how you have to. I do not think people are fully appreciating from the Israeli side what that attack on October 7th did to them. I don't think people are appreciating it enough, which is why you're not appreciating the Israeli reaction and why it's happening, which means also good luck stopping it from happening if you don't appreciate why it's happening. Listen to this. Jake says, in any case, what happened on October 7th to the Israelis and subsequently the hostages is such an important part of what is going on right now in Gaza. And I think it is important to show the world. The Israelis perceive Hamas to be an existential threat to their survival. Whatever you think of the IDF response, the Israeli Defense Forces, and I'm not defending it or prosecuting it, October 7th marked the end of Israel's containment strategy when it comes to Hamas. And it is part of the story. Let me see here. And the framing of what happened on October 7th by much of the Arab world and much of the progressive world in the U.S., which in some cases includes outright denialism, is also part of the story. He's talking about the fact, thank you, Courtney, that sort of progressives, left way. I used to be a progressive. Now it's much further to the left than me. It moved, but progressives in Canada and America, for example, are denying aspects of the attack, such as they're denying that women were raped. We know women were raped. There were witnesses to the rape. And also we saw women with literally bloody pants. I mean, bloody pants in their butt. We know what that is. I mean, anybody who's worked on rape knows what that is. And people are denying it. That's what Jake is talking about. I am reminded of what General Eisenhower said after his decision. Thank you, Ari. After his decision to invite the news media to witness what the soldiers saw when they began liberating the concentration camps. I think people ought to know about such things. I think people ought to know what they are fighting for and the kind of person they're fighting. Let me read one final thing, because what's interesting, Jake did a report on the rape aspect, which really bothered him especially, which I thought was interesting. The fact that women were being raped, thank you, Norway, as an aspect of this war by Hamas. And that, well, let me just read this to you, and then I'll go on. It's shocking. The degree to which Hamas terrorists raped and committed sexually violent acts on women and girls on October 7th is hideous. Thank you, Mustard. And there is evidence and witnesses to the degradation. It was a very difficult story to do because it was so graphic and horrifying. And where is the international women's community? Where is the U.S. feminist community? Do these girls and women not count as victims for some reason? Well, we know the reason. I wasn't aware victimhood for rape came with an asterisk. He did a lot more talk, but Jake's point is, again, I'll say it again for you guys. This conflict didn't start on October 7th, but it didn't start for either side on October 7th. Jake said it on, it was just an interview. I don't know where this was an interview on CNN's website I found. So you go to their website, look for their live coverage of the war. And at one point you'll see Jake being interviewed by somebody. I'm 99%, I shouldn't say this. I'm 99% sure this was on CNN's website. Oh, you know what this was from? This, I think, was Oliver Darcy's email. Oliver Darcy at CNN does a wonderful daily email. I think this was from Oliver's email last night. And his email last night, he interviewed Jake. That was it. So go Google Oliver Darcy, Jake Tapper, and hopefully you'll find this. In any case, I don't want to go through it again, but I think too many people do not understand why Israel is responding the way it is. And I think too many people are actually, I will say this too. I'll move on after this. I swear to you, I'll go to Ukraine next. What bothers me is if you look at the United Nations, which I'm online following this stuff all day long, the United Nations barely mentions the hostages. The United Nations is always mentioning the Palestinians. They're always talking about children, but it's always Palestinian children. They're never talking about literally, I didn't know a 10-month-old baby was being held hostage by Hamas. The United Nations talks about the ceasefire and why the ceasefire is needed because it will save the Palestinian children. It doesn't mention the ceasefire will also save the other children who will be released. I mean, literally, I've been following this with the UN. They never, ever, ever mention the Israelis. They never mention the Jews, and they never mention anybody from anywhere else who was in Israel and got caught. And it's something that Israel talks about all the time. And I got to tell you, I was a little suspicious because the Israelis will always talk about the UN being unfair. And I frankly wasn't sure if they were playing the refs or what, as we say. But watching it on this issue, like, again, talk about both sides. If you think it's bad, then talk about it being bad on both sides. Talk about the civilians getting killed on both sides. Talk about Hamas sending 10,000 rockets now to Israel. Every day they're sending rockets to citizens. But again, Israel is also killing civilians. Feel free to talk about that too. But it just, whatever. This issue drives me nuts. Okay, enough of the stupid issue. Let's move to Ukraine. So literally, maybe figuratively, maybe literally. Let's move to Ukraine, guys. All right. And we'll talk about this afterwards. Don't worry. I mean, we'll have a Q&A obviously after this. So please do keep the gifts coming. YouTube and TikTok, like I said, you guys help pay the bills. You make it so I'm able to keep doing this coverage. I do this every day. During the day, I'm doing updates on TikTok. I'm also preparing the news to do my show tonight. And it helps a lot with you guys doing the gifts, frankly, because it pays my bills. So thank you for doing that. Thank you, Lori and Mark. Let's do Ukraine now. So Ukraine, it is day 635 of Vladimir Putin's special 3-day military operation. Thank you, Timeless, for the roses. First up, thank you, Elise. So our fundraiser, we did very well. Thank you, guys. We pretty much met our limit. We were looking for a goal of $1,000. We're raising money to buy boots for Ukrainian soldiers, for actually volunteer soldiers being run by a former commander with the Azov battalion. And we were able to raise $980. We wanted $1,000. I asked Vlad and he said, you know what? 980 is close enough. You can pull it down. Don't ask people for, I said, should I ask them again? And he said, don't ask them for any more. It's okay. I said, okay. This means it's $9 a pair. Well, let me see here. Actually, that's almost, is it 111? What would it be? Hang on. Let me see. Like I said, whenever I'm doing this with you guys, I can't do my math. Otherwise, my math is good. almost 109 pairs. So thank you for that. It's $9 for a pair of boots. Thank you, Bob, for that. And we're going to get 109 pairs of boots for Ukrainian soldiers. So thank you, guys. Basically, they're winter boots they need because it's now muddy and slushy and everything right now. Thank you, Blue Ariels. And then with the snow coming, even more so. So thank you. So thank you, Chazak. Like I said, we like to raise money for sort of specific things in Ukraine because it's nice because 100% of the donation goes to actually help it. I don't take any of it. Thank you, Chase. Vlad doesn't take any of it. And I worked at the UN, which is a disaster, but I really don't like anymore giving money to big charities because I don't trust them. I think, and I know they spend a lot of money on their staff. They spend money, like at the United Nations, we were raising money for tragedies and stuff like what was it? The tsunami in, there was the tsunami in South Asia or Southeast Asia. There was the earthquake in Nepal. Thank you, Chase. And we're raising money at UNDP and the money is going nowhere. I mean, literally, I was asking, I said, well, but is the money actually going for the tragedy? No, it'll go for it'll go to our communications office. But our communications office communicates about the tragedy. So that works. I was like, so yeah. Any case, like I said, I like giving to things where it's a direct impact and literally your donations are going to buy $109 pairs of boots. So thank you for that. All right, let's get rolling here. So Avdiivka, let me get my map. We'll have a little update about Avdiivka. More good news, really. I mean, keep in mind, as we said, the war is going very slowly now. So I would argue anything that's good news coming out of Ukraine is good news, right? Rather than it's kind of tied. The boots are going to a brigade of volunteers run by a former Azov battalion commander. Vlad sent me all the info. They got a website up for volunteers to come. Vlad's got more. If you want to know exactly who, he's got the name of the brigade and everything. But he knows the guys, and that's who it's going. It's actually we're giving the money to a charity that's buying the boots. Is how they're doing it. That's working with some. Did you, Vicky? Thank you for that. That's working with a company in Kharkiv. That's a factory that's making the boots. All right. So Avdiivka has been over here, northwest of Donetsk, right here. Again, the Russian occupation is more or less here, 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 and here, right? So Donetsk is occupied by Russia. Right northwest is free. Avdiivka, and it's a town that the Russians have poured so many men, so many weapons into taking, and it hasn't been going that great for them. Not really. Well, we got a little more news today from the Ukrainians. Hang on. The Ukrainians say that Russians deployed several columns of armored vehicles to unsuccessfully attack Avdiivka today. They lost almost 80% of their equipment. Now, I will say this. The Ukrainians, generally speaking, have been pretty honest. We have not found the Ukrainians BSing us. They really haven't. So it's something where I don't always cite the Ukrainians as sources on the military stuff, but they've been honest. I mean, we've really not had reason to go, oh my God, the Ukrainians are always giving us fake news about what's happening. It's credible. So take it with a grain of salt because it's coming from one side, but like I said, they've been pretty credible. So they say 80% of the Russian equipment in this latest attack was destroyed. Russian forces continue trying to surround Avdiivka, launching 13 unsuccessful attacks against the front line and settlements on its flanks today, or in the last couple days. According to the spokesperson, Russian forces are dealing with desertion, and 7 Russian soldiers surrendered to Ukrainian troops yesterday. So that's good. This is a wild story too. Let me give you this update. I read an update on it today, and then I found the background on it. The Russians, okay, the Russians are so stupid in how they fight this stuff. Remember how a couple weeks ago, the Ukrainians very stupidly, and there's an investigation of this now, the Ukrainians very stupidly held like an award ceremony outside, and they got a bunch of them together, and the Russians found out and bombed them, and they killed like 20 soldiers. It was a big deal, really horrible. And it's being investigated as a criminal matter because the higher ups in the military who did this are freaking stupid. This is something the Russians tend to do, right? The big one the Russians did was New Year's Eve last year. Putin was giving his big address, midnight, and the Russians required the Russian soldiers to come back to their barracks in Ukraine to listen to the speech. So they put like 500 Russian troops in a building to hear it, like by video, to watch Putin's speech. The Ukrainians found out and they bombed the building. I mean, and it was it was great, but it was horrific, right? In terms of the damage it caused. Well, the Russians did it again. Again, after all of this, the Russians are still doing it. Dozens of Russian Marines were killed by a Ukrainian strike during an award ceremony in Donetsk province, I should say, or oblast, which is the province over here, the province that Avdiivka's in. The province is over here. So dozens of Russians killed on November 19th. That would be 3 days ago. Let me see here. The number of casualties has been reported by Russian media as well, which is good. So that makes it a little more real. A commander of Ukraine's 59th Brigade reports that 25 Russian Marines had been killed and more than 100 injured. Marines, even better. Members of Russia's 810th Marine Brigade were attending the awards ceremony in Donetsk on the occasion of Russia's Missile Forces and Artillery Day, which also had entertainment provided by Russian actress Polina Menshik when the attack occurred. Well, the article I read today said this Russian actress, who's apparently pretty well known, she came to serenade the troops in occupied Ukraine, the part of Ukraine that the Russians claim is theirs. And the Ukrainians bombed the ceremony she was at singing. Polina's gone. Polina's left the building. So that's pretty wild too. So Ukraine had very good intelligence on this. This was a big deal. Thank you, McFadge. And again, this is what I mean where the war, actually, I saw somebody explaining this a while ago. They were saying the war is now, whether you want to say a stalemate or what you want to say, it's going more slowly, but that doesn't mean, Vlad maybe had said this, it doesn't mean there aren't going to be big attacks or interesting attacks, right, taking place. This would be an example of it. Something that was very effective, causes a lot of damage to the Russians. I mean, killing 25 Marines is great. 100 others, great. But also killing a famous Russian actress, that causes pain, that hurts morale back home. You know, it also frankly makes some other Russian actors and actresses not want to go to Ukraine to do their little USO show, which is good too. Little more here. Let me see. So F-16s, a Ukrainian parliamentarian, so a member of the Ukrainian parliament, said today that Ukraine's F-16s will arrive at best in late spring. Now, we don't know if he or she is telling the truth, but the fact that they're even saying it means they got some kind of information on it that they're releasing late spring. You know, we keep hearing back and forth because remember at one point we were hearing that the F-16s wouldn't even be there until next August. Late spring is better because late spring puts you to maybe April, which is better than August, but I don't think we should count on we shouldn't count on the F-16s anytime soon, but we're already November. So we could be 4 months away, 3-4 months away from them getting the F-16s, which is interesting. NATO. Oh, let me tell you about this too. So U.S. mission to NATO. I saw this the other day. Then it slipped my mind and I couldn't find it, so I didn't tell you guys about it. I found it again today. It's pissing me off. This was posted on Twitter by the United States mission to NATO like 3 days ago. I think it was the 19th. And let me read this to you. They posted this as their support for Ukraine. Ukraine has taken back more than half of its territory seized by Russia forces since February 2022. This is NATO speaking. In this tough and dynamic battle, Ukraine's soldiers are fighting bravely every single day. I'm making sure the dog didn't have to go out. Are fighting every single day, and they continue to inspire the world. Thank you, Elizabeth. With their bravery and courage. We will continue. Listen to this part. This is from NATO, writing on their Twitter feed, right? We will continue to support them to be in the strongest possible position at the negotiating table when the time comes. We continue to stand with Ukraine while they defend their freedom. You're like, wait, what? So NATO specifically is saying, U.S. This is Biden, okay? The U.S. mission to NATO is, oh my God, hold on. Gotta let them, do you not understand how this works? Go. Jeez. My dog is literally one of the most brilliant dogs on the planet. But the one thing she can't figure out is when the door behind me is open this far, she can't figure out to put her nose and open it. Everything, she can open a closed bathroom door. She can't figure out how to push a door open. So anyway, back to NATO. They're outright saying that their goal isn't to beat Russia. Their goal is to put Ukraine in the strongest position possible at the negotiating table when the time comes. I have said this from the beginning. I have said from the freaking beginning that Biden is not in this for Ukraine to win. These guys let the truth slip by saying this. At all their meetings, this is the way they talk. At all their meetings, they talk and they know that this is not about liberating Ukraine, because if they liberate Ukraine, Putin will get mad, especially if Ukraine takes Crimea. They don't want to liberate Ukraine. They wanted Ukraine to get a little bit of land back and then be stuck. And they wanted Russia to be stuck and for there to be a big negotiation where Ukraine, and I'm telling you this too, thank you, boy mom, where Ukraine gives up land and everybody's happy, except in 6 years, Russia will, of course, invade again, which we know they will. And then we're going to be back in this war again in 6 years because we know that. But this pisses me off because, again, this is what I keep telling people, and I've been saying for over a year now. I'd be curious when the first time is that I came up with this analysis saying that Biden doesn't want to win. I think it was actually at the very beginning. I think it was at the very beginning. Because now what's interesting, too, is I don't get the pushback I used to get. I used to get such bad pushback from people when I would bring this up. And now I think most people kind of get it and go, okay, the third week, it probably was Callum. I remember, because I remember Biden going to Poland and I was like, we are afraid of pissing off Putin. And if Ukraine wins, we're afraid of what Putin will do. I don't know what that is. So let's see. It just infuriates me. All right, a couple more stories and we'll go. Oh God, Hungarian Prime Minister. Here we go. The Hungarian Prime Minister has written to the European Council president and said that European leaders should not endorse the European Commission's recommendation. Thank you, Timothy. that Ukraine be allowed to join the bloc. In other words, Hungary has officially written to the EU and said we should not let Ukraine in. I'm seeing more and more people talk about, you know what? Tell me this, by the way. I saw somebody mention this today who actually knows these things, that that basically Russia, what's the word I'm looking for here? Is there not, forget Russia, Ukraine, is there not some ability for the European Union to basically put Hungary on ice, to take away their voting rights or whatever it is? I read something about this today, and I've heard about it before, that there's some thing you can do that kind of puts them in the doghouse, you know, so that basically they can't get involved in the basically voting that's screwing everything up. They can put them in suspension. No, there was something, and it was Ann Applebaum. Sasha, I can never tell if my dog has to go out or what she's doing when she does this. You know my dog. But it was Ann Applebaum saying it, who's very smart. And when Ann says it, it's not something that somebody made up. No, they're holding up the money. That's not the issue. The question is basically, as Callum said, suspending them so that they no longer can vote. And hey, come here, Sasha. She may have to go out, but I'm kind of thinking, sorry, I have to pay attention to this because you know the dog. So I'm just looking here to make sure. No, her leash is inside. Okay, worst comes to worst, I may have to drag the dog outside again. We'll see. I took her out. On my internet. Oop, there it is. It's back. That was a little scary. All right, are we back on? Am I back on YouTube? It fits out for a minute. Well, she's not barking right now. Let me see. The problem is my dog also will bark at my mom for food. So it's very frustrating. Like, you're like, does she have to pee or does she just want food? Hello. Hi. Okay, she's got to pee. I know that walk. I'll be right back. All right, tell her I'll be right back, folks. All right, 1 second, Sasha. 1 second, 1 second. All right. Oh boy. That was real. She has to go out. That was real. She's got to go out. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. All right, one moment. All right, you. Come on. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. Got my leg. Hi. All right. All right. Go, 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 go. All right. All right. I'm back. Oh my God. God, she cracks me up. Sorry. Sorry. Oh my God. All right. Sorry. We had a dog break here. Don't you do that again. No. Come on. Are you all right? Hopefully she's all right. Oh my God. She does 100%. This is true. 100%. Are you okay now? Okay. But she ran to the door again and I was like, don't you dare. Nope. You did everything now. I took her out right before the show. Thank you for the poll. That's very funny on TikTok. I took her out before the show. Are you done? No, I'm not playing with you. I also had to buy a new toy. Oh my God. We're going on a tangent. I also had to buy new toys because she won't play with her old toys. There you are. She won't play with her old toys. So I brought her old toys and she was not happy about it. So I ended up having to buy her new toys. And so the new toy arrived today and she's like, oh my God, so excited. Anyway, all right, let me keep going here. Finland is closing all but one border crossing with Russia. This has been an ongoing issue where the Russians, and they've done this before. They've done it before, I think, to some of the Baltic countries. They are intentionally bringing refugees from Somalia, Syria, and there's a third country I'm forgetting, and they are driving them. They're transporting them to the Finnish border and dropping them off and then giving them bicycles to ride to the border so that they would basically inundate Finland and cause, political problems, etc. And the Finns have finally had it with the Russians and said, no more, no more. Now, Russia is basically pissed at the Finns, which is so, typical, because the Finns joined NATO and the Russians are pissed about it. It was Yemen. It was Yemen, Syria, and some other. Oh, Yemen's the third country. Yeah, it was Yemen, Syria, and who's the third? It was 3 countries. I'm forgetting the third. But in any case, they're pissed at the Finns for joining NATO, and this is Russia's just immature way of getting even with the Finns, basically. What the Finns did, by the way, to be sort of jerks back, they really pissed the Russians off. Finland put on display a broken down Russian tank, like in their main town square or whatever it is. I don't know. I suspect it must be one that was destroyed in Ukraine, is my guess. Well, either it was one that was destroyed in Ukraine, or it was one that like the Finns destroyed back in the late 30s, early 40s, where the 3-year war, when they just like destroyed the Russians. So I don't. If anybody's from Finland here, I don't know if you know which it was, but I was assuming it was from Ukraine. But the Russians are pissed because they put a tank on display of the Russians that got blown up. Really funny. But so there's, Russia has issues. Russia has issues. From Ukraine, okay, that's what it is then. Sasha, cut it out. Russia has real issues. And they just can't deal with the fact that they're not a world power anymore. I mean, they've got nukes, but you know what? Israel's got nukes too. So does Pakistan. I mean, they're not a world power anymore. You want to come up? Come on up. They're not a world power anymore. And they just get very upset that, thank you, Amy, that especially NATO, nobody in NATO care. I mean, we care in the sense that Russia can cause lots of problems, but we don't care in the sense that Russia threatens their nukes and we go, okay, whatever. We got nukes too. I always say, Chazek said inferiority complex. I always say, see, and now my nose is going again. I always say it's a combination of an inferiority complex mixed with a delusion of grandeur. So it's basically, why don't you recognize how great I am? I'm great, and you don't recognize it. So it's this incredible frustration at the fact that you don't know how good they are, basically, right? Okay, Mike just brought up the NATO suspension, or the European Union suspension stuff. Thank you. This Mike says, it says the EU Article 7 procedure can ultimately lead to the suspension of voting rights for a member that has violated common values. But its use requires unanimity. Well, it would be unanimity of everybody else. Pledges by Hungary and Poland to veto such a motion against the other have rendered the article useless. Oh, so Poland and Hungary, interesting. Well, Poland, I'm going to guess Poland, it's because Poland had a lot of issues with democracy. I mean, Duda, who was very good in Ukraine, the president was really shitty on democracy. And a lot of people were very worried about it. I suspect that's what the bilateral probably was. That probably was. All right, a little more news here before we get to Q&A. Sorry, guys, we had a lot of news today. Or we have a lot of news, but we've been talking about a lot. Germany handed over 20 Marder, M-A-R-D-E-R, by the way, armored vehicles to Ukraine. This is... They previously provided 80. The Martyrs are very good from what I've heard. The Bulgarian parliament, thank you, Elizabeth, ratified an agreement to provide armored transport vehicles to Ukraine. Lithuania delivered 3 million units of small arms ammunition and other things, including winter equipment, to Ukraine. And I thought this was kind of cool. North Macedonia completed training of the first group of Ukrainian soldiers that they trained, a process kept confidential until now for security reasons. How cool is that? I just kind of like that. North Macedonia has been involved. Good for them. Just really good for them. And finally a poll from Ukraine that I think is interesting. And it says more than 70% of Ukrainians have a negative view of Russian citizens. Now, this one fascinated me. I read this at first and I went, 70%. They're like trying to destroy your country. The issue was Ukrainians' views, not of Russia, but of Russian citizens. Right? Which is actually very interesting, right? So listen to this, their view of Russian citizens. In other words, do you blame the Russians for the war? They're Russian citizens, right? More than 70% of Ukrainians have a negative view of Russian citizens. That's interesting right there, that 30% don't have a negative view. Now, maybe they've got an in-between view, but only 70%, I would think it'd be much worse, right? Have a negative view, while just 3% view them positively. Okay, so 3% are positive, 27% are like, still interesting. The other aspect of the poll, Language. The poll revealed 58% of Ukrainians speak only Ukrainian at home, 10% speak only Russian, and 31% speak a combination of both languages at home. Just interesting. We know Lithuania is a bilingual country, just like Canada, just like Holland, just like Belgium. Not Holland. Holland isn't bilingual. Holland does too, though, right? Doesn't Holland also have, Belgium does. We know Belgium does. I forget. Holland doesn't have a multilingual thing, does it? That's Belgium that has, the Walloon thing is Belgium, though, isn't it? That's Belgium, I'm thinking. Yeah. I know Belgium does. I don't think Holland does. But anyway, like a number of countries that sort of have multiple languages, Switzerland, for example. Anyway, they do too in Ukraine. All right. That's what I got. I will show by the way, our auctions ended today. One remaining item. I don't want to make things bad for Mustard, but I think the one remaining item, or one of the remaining items we've got, is the challenge coin for the Azov steel plant. That is still there, but maybe don't take it away from Mustard. But it's a challenge coin of the commemorating the Ukrainian 2,000 Ukrainian forces defending the Azovstal steel plant. It was the Azov battalion doing it. But anyway, we've got lots of cool auctions. I'll be putting more up tomorrow. Actually, I'm going to put a lot of auctions up tomorrow. Because that is, I've got basically every week we do auctions over on Discord community, discord.aravosis.com. And I use it to raise money for Ukraine and to raise money for my work. 50% goes to each. But it's fun stuff from Ukraine. And I'm going to put some of the best stuff I've got in the next couple of weeks because I want it out there for Christmas. So this week's especially, keep an eye tomorrow. I've got some of that. I'm going to have the angel shell that you guys like. From Bakhmut and other things. So I should have a number of cool things. All right, let's do Q&A. So is the nuclear plant still okay? Not been any news on the nuclear plant. There's nothing on it. So Frisian is an official language in the Netherlands. I don't even know if I know that. Yusuf, why do people call Hamas terrorists? I thought resistance is justified when people are occupied. Well, that is a fascinating question, actually. And I don't know what the answer is, in the sense that, how do you define terrorism? And when I say terrorism, I don't just mean terrorism. I mean terrorism that's off limits is what I mean. Okay. And I say this because it is, I think I've told you guys this before. I did my graduate program, a combined degree at Georgetown. I did a law degree there, a Juris Doctor, and a master's as well in foreign service at Georgetown. And I went recently and helped with the oral exams for the graduating, I went a long time ago for the new graduate students graduating. And it was fun. Or you sit down with the students and you got a panel of 3 of you. I sat on the Ukraine panel and basically quizzed them like a devil. It was so much fun. It really was. Just really as if they're in the government, they're talking to the president, they're talking to a secretary, and you are. And I just really pushed them hard on, they had to present an opinion paper on Ukraine. Well, what I asked one of them, I'm not going to tell you who, because I don't want to get into, or what they said, but I asked one of them and I said, is terrorism ever justified? And the person said, well, no, or something like that. And I said, okay, what if, I said, my generation, I grew up with the Soviet Union, right? The sort of the nightmare on TV was the Soviets invading and taking over, right? Thank you, Rainbow. In many ways, The Man in the High Castle, that if folks know that TV show, similar concept, even though that was World War II. The idea is, what if the Soviets were able to take over, right? The US. Or in this case, if you've ever seen Man in the High Castle, it's World War II. The Nazis got the bomb first, and the Nazis nuked Washington, and the Americans gave up. So all of a sudden, the Nazis took the East Coast of the US, and the Japanese took the West Coast of the US, right? And I said, in those conditions, would it be acceptable for Americans who are trying to stop their country from getting wiped out? Would it be acceptable for them to, for example, bomb a supermarket that Soviet families use, exclusively for Soviet families? And I believe the person said yes, which I thought was very interesting. And I said, okay, then is terrorism also okay to use against Israel? And they said no. Now, as I recall, I said, okay, why? And they gave a pretty good answer. I can't remember the answer now, because also part of the problem with this is you're also kind of on the spot because you're constantly trying to think of, like in law school, we do this. It's called the Socratic method, where basically you're always trying to think of how to push back on everything they say. So I was being very careful, but I don't remember what he said. But it raises an interesting question of not just how you define terrorism. Because, for example, I would define terrorism if America were occupied by the Soviets, okay? Or like we said, World War II. The TV show, wonderful TV show, by the way, Man in the High Castle on Amazon, wonderful TV show. The Nazis win. They drop a nuclear bomb on Washington first. They win the war. The Nazis take over, right? And they're trying to just wipe out any vestige of America. And it's literally Nazi Germany in America, the racial stuff, everything, right? If we were to, thank you, Holly, if we were to bomb Nazi buildings, if we were to bomb Nazi supermarkets where the Nazi elite go, I think that definition would be terrorism. I also think it would be acceptable, right? So now the problem you get is all terrorism isn't unacceptable. So which terrorism is acceptable? So to me, the question, it was Yusuf, I think it was your name, maybe. The question isn't just, is it terrorism or not? The question is terrorism always unacceptable, or when is it acceptable? And that gets very complicated and confusing, I think. And I'm not even sure. I mean, I've got my own gut sense of what is and isn't acceptable, but I think it's a very difficult question to answer. I really do. Because like my gut tells me what happened on October 7th in Israel was not acceptable, right? But if you asked me to define that difference between that and some of the other examples, it gets complicated. Partially because I don't think what Israel is doing is the same thing as the Soviets taking over America or the Nazis or whatever, right? But it's very anyway. I don't know, but well, and maybe you guys don't even. I mean, I see somebody saying terrorism is never acceptable. Maybe you don't agree with me too. I mean, maybe, like I said, if the Nazis took over your country, well, think about actually, I don't even have to use a hypothetical. World War II, right? You're in Paris, you're in Nice. I mean, I know because like I know France, and the Nazis occupied by the Nazis. I would have gladly delivered bombs to blow them up. And if it was a Nazi restaurant, a Nazi whatever, I would absolutely blow it up. Absolutely. I would have no problem doing it, right? So my question is that the kind of thing for you guys that you would say, no, I wouldn't do it, okay? You're in Europe, it's World War II, you're in Paris or you're in Nice, or pick a European city that's occupied by the Nazis, and you would not blow up a restaurant frequented by Nazi officers and their families. And it's only Nazi officers and their family. It's a Nazi club. You would not blow it up because it might have civilians in it. Even if the civilians were their families, you wouldn't do it. Would you not do it because their families are there? I'm throwing that question at you guys. Okay, Joseph says I would not. Interesting. Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. Well, you also get the question of what's resistance, I guess. Sure. Jens says, the rules of war, there are clear what you can and can't do as a resistance movement. I agree, but I'm not sure I agree with the rules of war on that. Thank you, Marie. To be honest, if the Nazis had taken over Paris and I was a Parisian in the 1940s, I would have not given two Fs about the rules of war. I really wouldn't. I would have figured out the best way to give them so much pain that they're forced to leave. I wouldn't say, well, we can't do that because that wouldn't be fair, right? That would be against the rules. I wouldn't. No, I mean, yeah, no, that's what I mean, Callum. I think that's, yeah. So it's very, I'm not saying you should go after Israel at all, because obviously I'm somebody who thinks the Palestinian terrorism against Israel has been unacceptable. But I do agree that it is very difficult to define when and to give a definition of when it is and isn't allowed. That I think is difficult. And by the way, I'll say the same thing to the Palestinians or to the Arabs who are with us today, right? You also have to figure out then what's the definition that says Israel can't hit you back, right? If it's okay to bomb Israeli civilians, why can't Israel bomb your civilians? Israel's been suffering for 75 years from terrorism. Jews have been suffering for 3,000 years from not having a country, not having a land, being oppressed. Why can't they do it too? I mean, the problem becomes the definition, meaning not just in this case I like it, in this case I don't. It's how do you define the difference between the case where you say it's okay and the case that you say, how do you create a rule that applies, that you go, yes, with this rule I've created, this definition, we now know if we apply Israel, if we apply America, if we apply, I don't care where, in World War II, we'll get the correct answer. I don't know. No, I do. I think it's no, this is why I say, like, I think all these issues are complicated. I really do. I don't know. Anyway, just wanted to bring it up. I mean, I shouldn't say bring it up. The guy asked, but it was an interesting question because I think you have to be able to answer that. How come I don't talk about the West Bank? There's no news about the West Bank right now. Most of the news is about Gaza. I've talked about the settlers. The settlers have been going crazy in the West Bank, and I've criticized them. So, well, the rule isn't stop occupying. Why are they? No, we're not going to go down that path again. Why was Israel occupying? First of all, they're not occupying Gaza, but why was Israel occupying parts of the West Bank and Gaza earlier? Because you guys tried to kill them and you lost. Classic FAFO. You effed around and you found out. You guys invaded Israel and they took your land, right? Why did you invade Israel? Because Israel was there. Well, Israel was there because the UN gave them the land. Why did right? Why did the UN give them the land? Because for 3,000 years before that, people all over the world kept killing them, the Jews. So, it's not as easy as to say there was an occupation. There was an occupation because you attacked them, right? And again, you attacked them because the UN stepped in and gave some of their land to Israel. I understand why that made you mad, right? Fair enough. But nonetheless, that should have made you mad at the UN, not the Israelis. Thank you, Airship. So again, I very much think this is a complicated issue that people try to make too easy. Oh, there's an occupation. Not so easy. Not so easy. Anyway, I know the sensitive topics, although we're doing pretty well with it today. What else we got? Well, Kelly, tell me more. Kelly says, sorry, let's switch to Ukraine again really quick. Now that we got that out of the way. I think Zelensky is right when he says that the world security architecture is broken and it needs to be reformed. I'm guessing you mean the UN. I'm not sure. The problem is, what do you do with the UN? I don't know. It probably is the UN that he's talking about because Russia's there. Russia, China, and the US veto everything in essence. So we can all stop anything from happening. Well, again, people are bringing up, or somebody's bringing up what about the Nakba, which is basically the Palestinians sort of fleeing the first time, as I recall. But that gets complicated too, because the first time the Palestinians fled from the area after Israel was established, why did they flee? Because the UN came in and set up a Palestinian state and an Israel. They set up two like states or whatever. And what did the Arabs do? They invaded Israel to wipe out the Israelis and to wipe out the Jews. So the Jews took some land. And what did they do? They kicked all the Arabs out and the Palestinians out. So yes, you had a big evacuation or whatever you want to call it of Palestinians. But why did it happen? Because you guys invaded. Again, it is more complicated than you'd like people to believe. Having said that, why did you invade? Because the UN came in and took some of your land and gave it to Israel. So I understand why you were upset, to be honest. But nonetheless, you then invaded, you effed around, and you found out, and they kicked you out. No, this issue is, I refuse to accept, and I'll say the same thing on the Israeli side, though, as I said. I understand why the Palestinians wanted to kick Israel out, because they lost some of their, Palestinians at that point, they were all Arabs, right? That the Arabs in the area lost some of their land. Well, in principle, they lost the land. It wasn't even clear they would have been kicked out. From what I'm told, they lost, they were subsumed under the state of Israel, even though they were Arabs in a sort of non-state before that, and they didn't want to be part of Israel. I get that, but it's complicated. It's complicated. Anyway, thank you for Super Hornet for the gift on TikTok. What else we got? That's not really English. Sorry, I'm watching the trolls kind of use their talking points. when they say it's like the Russians do when they kind of use stuff, but it doesn't quite make sense. Thank you, Dexter, for the gift on TikTok. Well, in retrospect, clearly everyone should have accepted the partition plan. They should have accepted it back in, 48 or whatever. I mean, clearly. And they probably should have accepted the plan back in, was it 1999 or so with Bill Clinton? Clearly now in retrospect, people just should have accepted it and moved on, because at this point, you're not getting rid of Israel. I mean, you're not getting rid of them. So you basically say, do you want to figure something out or not? But you're not getting rid of Israel. It's 10 million people. The U.S. stands behind it. It's not happening. So what do you do? It is, somebody had asked above, or they asked basically saying, is the U.S. going to turn around and give part of the U.S. to Native Americans? Exactly. Right. It's not going to happen. I mean, we've set up reservations and things, but we're not going to like give up a state. I think they're suing in New York for that, or they were at least. It's not going to happen. At some point, and in Strasbourg isn't going back to Germany. It's French now. That's life. I don't mean to be brutal about it, but we can't keep playing these games. At this point, Israel exists. It's not going away. Having said that, we should absolutely stop Israel from taking more, like the settlers, from taking more land in the West Bank and all of that. That stuff is horrible. And I that's why I don't like Netanyahu and those guys on the right, but that I agree. That's horrible. What else we got? What else we got, guys? Beep, 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 beep. Yeah, I assumed he was talking about the UN, Kelly. Yeah, Kelly says more about the Zelensky thing. He was talking about the UN, but I think the EU and the US have run into their own structural problems that need to be addressed. Yeah, but I mean, well, that's an interesting point. No, that's an interesting point, actually. Okay, Kelly's point is interesting. I mean, it was fine before, but now it's got me more interested. Kelly was raising this quote from Zelensky about how the world's institutions aren't able to cope with today's problems. Interesting, because if you look at the EU, you've got the Hungary problem. You look at NATO, you've got the Turkey problem, although NATO did pretty well. Turkey didn't really sort of stop, the Ukraine stuff. They did stop the accession, a little bit of the Turkey problem. EU, bigger problem with Hungary. US, you've got an overarching political problem growing in the US, which is interesting in terms of just this weird, MAGA Trumpism kind of splitting the country apart and affecting our national security. That's its own sort of unique problem there. I don't know. Nothing on the Abrams. No, I mean, Best Worst Gamers asking, do we know anything about the Abrams? We've heard nothing about it. The American Abrams tanks arrived a month ago, actually September, end of September, they arrived, I think, in Ukraine, and we've heard nothing since then. It's only 31 tanks, but still. Callum, did you hear anything? I'm just curious of public knowledge. I mean, if Callum's still here, I don't know if anybody's heard anything, but we've heard nothing about it though, at all. League of Nations, yeah. Well, the United Nations, again, part of the problem is the Security Council that everybody can veto, but part of the problem then becomes too is the U.S. doesn't want to give up. The U.S. doesn't want the Security Council doing things when we disagree, right? So the U.S. wouldn't want the Security Council coming down on Israel. So we like our veto for that. We don't want the Security Council coming down on us, right? But we do want them coming down on Russia, and Russia feels the same way. And China, they don't want the Security Council coming down on human rights in China. So none of the main powers have any, none of the countries that have a veto have any incentive to change it. Why should we give away the power? Thank you, Jeremy. So I don't know how you fix it. You know what I mean? What else? Oh, and one obvious thing, it's funny. I saw somebody mention in the comments. I didn't even mention it, but it was sort of a given. The biggest problem with the ceasefire with Israel and Gaza and Hamas, in principle, it's over in 4 or 5 days. Once it starts, first it's got to start. Let's see if it starts. But then it's over in 4 or 5 days. And then the war starts again. Now, a lot of aid will come in the meantime. Maybe it'll let more of the Palestinians get out of the north if they want to, but it's from Israel's perspective, Hamas needs to go. Hey, Stooge, Hamas needs to go, and they need to be no longer in power in Gaza, and they have to lose their weapons. And this isn't going to accomplish that. So having said that, it's still not a bad thing, I guess, that if they're able to figure out how to at least do this for 5 days or 4 days, but war, whatever. I don't care what you call it. I mean, Gary doesn't like calling it a war. I don't care. To me, that's like Putin. Is it a special military operation? I don't care. I mean, I really don't. I think the semantics is irrelevant. Thank you, Olga. Dnipro news? I mean, not really. I mean, I talked about Avdiivka. The Russians have been going nuts in Avdiivka, and the Ukrainians say they destroyed like 80% of the most recent Russian attack, 80% of their equipment, which is good on Avdiivka. So that was good. I did see the hostage deal was delayed. At this point, it was supposed to start Thursday morning. Now, at best, Friday morning, they're saying, but we don't know. Oh, boy. Oh, that's interesting. Terry says, requiring recognition of the International Criminal Court as a membership requirement would give the UN a consequence arm. Sure, but the U.S. doesn't recognize it. So we're not going to agree to that, right? I mean, that's part of the problem is everyone has their own sort of partisan interests, so to speak, that you don't want to change. It's like saying the Electoral College in the U.S., which is the crazy way we elect the president. Well, Democrats would like to get rid of it because Democrats keep winning the presidents. We keep winning the popular vote. Thank you, Katie. Twice now in the last 20 years, Democrats have won the popular vote and have lost the presidency because of the crazy way our system works. So, of course, Democrats want to get rid of it, and Republicans, of course, don't, because it handed the presidency to the Republicans 2 times that they, in essence, lost. Why should they get rid of it? They don't want to. And it's the same problem of having new states come into the union. No party wants the other guy to get their people coming for their state. It's part of the problem with immigration. It's a mess. I mean, excuse me, this is partisanship overall, really. But it's a mess. Oh, anything else, guys? I feel like we're more tired today. Maybe it's the holiday coming up in America. We do have Thanksgiving tomorrow, so I am not going to be broadcasting. I might, like I said, do kind of an impromptu hangout tomorrow morning, maybe. But tomorrow is a big deal in terms of a family holiday, so I will not be preparing a show for tomorrow night. But as I said, I might do a hangout in the morning, though, so we'll see. Is the League of Nations the same as the United Nations? No, Google it. The League of Nations was the first attempt that didn't work, but I'd have to read up on my history to remember why it didn't work, but it didn't work. Thank you, Chase. So Google them. I'm sure Wikipedia's probably got a nice explanation of the two. Or even the United Nations, the history, it'll start with League of Nations. Yeah. So, post-op, sorry, Daddy, to hear that. I'm yawning at you guys again. Ooh, thank you, Sharon. And to you as well. Yep, we know it's delayed till Friday. I did not see it because they didn't sign papers. I saw part of it was Hamas can't say how many people are, what the name of the actual hostages are being released. Did he really? Sorry, Dan is saying that the new Argentine leader Miele, is it Miele, is talking about invading the Falklands. That wasn't one of the crazy things he said, did he? Well, if he does, they're going to lose again. So let's hope they don't. I hope they don't, because the Brits will kick their butt. I mean, I can understand from an Argentine perspective. It is right off their coast, but nonetheless, well, he might want to be careful with that. Kelly says, I sometimes get the sneaking feeling we're all going to devolve into city-states by the end of the century. Then I wake up and have my coffee. Well, or maybe the U.S. devolves into city-states too. I don't know. Yeah, there was an explosion on the bridge between the U.S. and Canada, but so far, at least when we started the show, they were saying it currently does not look like let me put it this way. They are currently not calling it terrorism. I don't want to say it's not terrorism, but they're not calling it that. Thank you, Drift, for the gift. They're currently not calling it terrorism, at least. So that's the deal. What is a city-state? What would be the definition of a city-state? Kind of cities that were countries is the really bad way I'm going to explain it. Back in the old days, like Athens or Sparta, where they were kind of their own. Well, the Vatican, but a more generalized definition. Wouldn't it be cities that are actually their own countries in essence? Would you not call it that? Well, Rome isn't a city-state. The Vatican would be, right? Right? So the Vatican is because the Vatican literally is its own country, so to speak. Well, Milan and Venice in the old days. Yeah, in the old days. Singapore city-state? I never think of that. I guess so. Okay. Well, the Vatican is its own uh, entity, so to speak, internationally and all of that. Yeah, it's autonomous. Yeah. Yeah. Disneyland. Yeah, Disneyland. Disneyland is its own city-state too. That's very funny. I don't know. Do the indigenous support Palestine? I don't. And also, I'm not sure what the indigenous even means in America. I don't know what that means. Do you mean Native Americans? I just don't know who that actually even means because we don't really use that term here. That may be in Canada they use that word. We don't really use that word here in the U.S. Indigenous. I think that is a Canadian word. So I mean, the word exists, but we don't use it for those communities here. So anyway, Hunger Games were city-states, but were they? I thought they were all part of Panem or whatever it's called, all the districts and everything. You know what I mean? You never hear about the other stuff. Yeah, well, I was saying tonight I find, as Hannah's saying, this live is relaxing. This is tonight I think is a more relaxed hangout that we are having. You know, Native Americans are pro-Palestine. I mean, I don't know. It is. I mean, certainly on its face, right? I think Native Americans. Excuse me. I'm sorry, guys. You're tired again. Native Americans would look at it, and to them, it may look similar, right? They're an ethnic group, a small ethnic group that, in this case, well, you guys never had a country, so to speak, but you know what I mean? That doesn't have a country. Has the bigger power around them. That's kind of, whether they think it's wiping it out or whatever. But my suspicion is they look at it as being similar. Yeah. I mean, well, there was a poll. Terry Davis says, would the majority of Palestinians still reject full Israeli citizenship, a one-state solution? There was a poll the other day that I saw of Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza that the one state they were not in favor of at all. Two-state, I'm trying to think. I don't know if I can find it easily, is the only question. Because it's in my thing here, but I'm yawning. You guys left it right now. Oh, sorry. Let me look really quick, but I'm not sure. Let me see. I may be able to find it just by looking at, because I can tell in my clipped images what is a poll. Hold on. I may be able to find this actually. Okay, it's not that. Hold on. We're getting close, though. We're getting close. I think I can find this. It's not that. That's Elon being evil. Okay, here we go. Okay, this was a poll last week. Good or bad, who knows? I forget what the group is called. Oh, it's called Arab World for Research and Development, I think is the polling group. And they polled people in Gaza and the West Bank. One state solution for two people. 7% in the West Bank supported, or 8% of the West Bank. 2% in Gaza supported it. One state for two people. So there you go. Two-state solution for two people. 13% support two states in the West Bank. 23% support it in Gaza. Well, that's kind of stupid. I mean, because you're stuck with that. A Palestinian state from the river to the sea. 77% in West Bank. 70% in Gaza. I mean, if that poll is right, that's part of now, the only thing is whether people felt patriotically they had to say that, I can understand. But if that's really the position, then it's never getting better for you, because Israel's not going away. I hope to God Palestinians don't really believe that their position is no. Israel has to go away, or we're not going to stop fighting, because then you're going to keep losing because Israel's stronger than you. That's just dumb. There have to be two states. There have to be two states. It's really, at this point, but then again, that could have been bravado. I mean, people saying, because, a pollster comes around, maybe you're not supposed to say you're for two states. Maybe especially not to mention, when one of the options is, no, we get the whole thing. Well, of course you'd rather get the whole thing, right? So who's going to say, no, let's split it with Israel, right? So the poll could have had it. Hopefully the poll is having issues that way. I hope. So anyway. All right, guys, I think we can call it quits here. Not 6:20 anyway. We're going an hour and 20 minutes. It's kind of mellow. All right. So tomorrow, like I said, is Thanksgiving in America. So I will not be doing a show tomorrow, but I will probably, except that my mother's going to be running around like opening the table and doing stuff. If mom doesn't have me going crazy tomorrow preparing for dinner for Thanksgiving, I will try to do a morning hangout with you all, but I'm not going to promise, maybe. Otherwise, I'll be back Friday at 6 p.m. So you will see me then. All right. And otherwise, thank you. So thanks for joining. It was kind of a mellow show tonight, but I don't mind mellow. Thanks for joining us, everybody, especially the foreigners from all over the place, because I know it's late for you guys. So thank you all as well. Yeah, that State Department guy was insane. I might as well talk about this really quick. Luke mentioned. So there's a video. There's actually several videos. It's really weird. I mean, this guy is crazy. There's a guy who was a former State Department guy, U.S. State Department diplomat, seemed to be highly recognized or like highly awarded or whatever, worked in Obama's White House. And he was caught on tape berating an Arab like street vendor in New York, like an Arab guy in New York who's got his little stand selling hot dogs or whatever he does. And this guy is just being like a jerk to him. I mean, really nasty, just nasty stuff. You know, Egyptian American or Egyptian immigrant, or I don't even know if he's American. He could have been a recent immigrant, but Egyptian. And he's just eviscerating this guy about, and basically, and says to him at one point that he's going to like call the Egyptian secret. I didn't know what the word was, but it had to be the secret police or something. He was going to call the Egyptian secret police. He was going to call, immigration on the guy. And the thing is, the guy had done nothing. At this point, the guy had done nothing wrong. Now, one thing I will say, except then there were two more videos which kind of cinched the deal. One thing I will warn you of, always be careful when you see videos that show the middle of a conversation, because we never saw the video, but now mind you, we may know why. We never saw a video of the beginning of the conversation. And I ask that only because I don't know. I don't think this happened, by the way. I think this guy's a jerk who did this. I think he's a total jerk. But if you see the middle of the conversation, you see the guy being evil back. It is possible in some circumstances that the other person started it, that the other person said horrific things about Jews first, and then you said horrific things about Arabs. I do not think that's what happened here, but sometimes it does happen. So be careful in the future. Anytime you see a video that starts in the middle and somebody's being a jerk, ask yourself, was the other person a jerk first? It's important. In this one, the reason I don't think that's an issue is because there's 3 videos of the guy. Well, it's what Raven's saying. There's 3 videos of this guy. He was coming back again and again and again. I mean, it's really bad. And like the third time, you're kind of going, okay, this is creepy. I mean, it was evil. Thank you, Rockin', but it's also creepy. It's like stalker creepy because he keeps coming back. So that's why I agree with Wild Hunt. I almost got the sense there's something wrong with the guy because it's a little crazy. I mean, it's evil, but it's a little crazy. But it's pretty awful. It was really awful. And at one point, I will say, which I like, at one point, some New Yorker stepped in and tried to stop the guy. He stepped in, he's like, okay, that's enough. I have free speech. I can say what he goes, no, you really don't. You need to stop. You're harassing the guy. And I don't know what happened from there, but it was nice to see the New Yorker step in and kind of go, okay, leave the guy alone. It was, and it was, I wasn't sure if it was another like Arab American, but the guy had a nice New York American accent, which made it even better. Because it just looked like some New Yorker, unrelated, just said, okay, this is bullshit. But anyway, it's pretty bad. Yeah, it's pretty bad. I mean, fortunately, there haven't been too many of those happening in the U.S. Most of the stuff happening has been anti-Semitic and anti-Jewish. It hasn't been anti-Arab. We can be anti-Arab. We were anti-Arab after September 11th, that's for sure. But that's not been happening as a result of this, at least fortunately. But yeah, it's bad. You'll see the videos out there. They're everywhere. It's bad. It's bad. All right, guys, I'm going to go. All right. So let's have a good night. Look for me tomorrow, probably casually dropping in. I'll do a live, but probably casual. And then Friday, I'll be back for my show Friday. And then Saturday, we'll do our usual hangout Saturday morning with the paid monthly subscribers. Okay. All right, guys. Talk to you later. Thank you. Have a good night. Thanks, mods.